Emotional boy stuns the world with Hotel California globe loudly crying. The theater lights dimmed. A quiet hush spread through the vast hall as thousands of eyes turned toward the stage. The air carried a sense of expectation, that familiar energy before a performance where no one knows what will unfold. In the shadows, a boy no older than 15 stood trembling. His heart pounded so loudly in his chest that he thought the entire world could hear it. His hands clutched a microphone, fingers sweaty, knees weak. He had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that it was real, fear threatened to consume him. This wasn't just another performance. This was his chance to be seen, his chance to tell the world his story through a song, Hotel California. His name was Elias. Born into a small, impoverished village, Elias knew the weight of hardship from the moment he could remember. His father worked as a fisherman, braving dangerous seas for little reward, while his mother sold vegetables in the marketplace. Life was a daily struggle for survival, and there were days when dinner was nothing more than a handful of rice. Yet amidst the hardship, there was one thing that filled their modest home with warmth: music. His father, though weary from work, kept an old, battered guitar by the bedside. When storms raged outside and hunger gnawed at their bellies, he would strum its strings and sing songs that carried hope. Elias would sit wide-eyed, memorizing each note, each lyric, as though they were treasures. As he grew older, Elias discovered that he, too, had a voice. It wasn't trained, polished, or guided by any teacher. It was raw, soulful, and carried the pain of his struggles. He would sing on the shoreline, his voice blending with the crashing of waves. He sang at night when the stars were the only witnesses, pouring his heart into every note. He had no idea that this gift of his would one day bring him before the world. But Elias's journey to the stage was never simple. His family could not afford schooling beyond the basics, and the idea of music lessons was impossible. Children in the village often mocked him, calling his dreams foolish. "You'll never be anything more than a fisherman's son," they taunted. But Elias kept singing, even when it hurt, because music was not just a passion for him. It was his lifeline, the thread that held his spirit together when life threatened to break him apart. Then came the day that changed everything. A traveling music coach passed through the village, staying in a nearby town. Elias, gathering courage, walked miles barefoot just to perform for him. Nervous and stammering, he sang a song. The coach listened silently, then placed a hand on his shoulder. "Your voice," he said softly, "it carries truth. The world needs to hear it." From that moment, a door opened. Though Elias had no money, the coach offered to mentor him for free, giving him basic training and encouraging him to try for a televised talent competition. The boy who once sang only for the sea now stood before cameras, bright lights, and millions of strangers. And now, here he was, standing on stage, shaking under the weight of expectation. The host introduced him, and murmurs rippled across the audience. They didn't expect much. After all, he was just a poor boy from a forgotten village, standing against seasoned performers with years of experience. The judges leaned back in their chairs, skeptical but curious. The music began. The iconic opening chords of Hotel California filled the air, and Elias closed his eyes, breathing deeply. As he began to sing, the first notes trembled, fragile like glass. But then something shifted. He remembered his father's guitar, his mother's weary smile, the endless nights of hunger. He poured all of it into his voice. The trembling turned into fire. His words carried not just melody but stories of survival, pain, and resilience. The audience was spellbound. His voice wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished like a trained singer, but it was real. Every lyric of Hotel California took on new meaning, wrapped in the raw emotion of a boy who had lived through storms. His high notes soared with desperation, his low tones echoed with sorrow. The judges exchanged looks, their expressions softening. Tears welled in the eyes of strangers who had never met him but now felt as if they knew his life. By the time he reached the final chorus, the hall was silent, except for his voice filling every corner of the room. And then, the last note lingered in the air, fading like the final rays of sunset. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. Then, the silence broke into thunderous applause. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, crying. One judge slammed the golden buzzer, sending Elias straight into the finals. Confetti rained down, and Elias stood frozen, tears streaming down his face. He wasn't just a poor boy anymore. He was a voice the world would never forget. But with fame came new challenges. Overnight, Elias's performance went viral, spreading across the globe. People from different countries wrote to him, telling him how his voice had touched their souls. Yet the pressure was overwhelming. Critics questioned whether he was a one-song wonder, and he was haunted by the fear of failing those who now believed in him. There were nights when he couldn't sleep, when the voices of doubt returned, whispering that he wasn't good enough, that he didn't belong among stars. He faced financial struggles too. Offers poured in, but so did people who sought to exploit him. Managers promised fame but wanted to trap him in unfair contracts. Elias, barely a teenager, had to learn the harsh reality of an industry that chews up and spits out young talent. But through it all, his family remained his anchor. His father reminded him, "Never sing for money, my son. Sing for the truth. That is what brought you here." Those words carried him through the storms of fame. In the finals, Elias had a choice: perform a safe, easy song to secure votes, or risk everything by performing another emotionally demanding classic. He chose risk. Standing before the world once more, he sang with the same raw honesty that had first carried him to the stage. Though he didn't win the competition, it didn't matter. By then, the world already saw him as a winner. Record labels reached out. International tours followed. His voice echoed in countries he had only read about as a child. Years later, Elias would stand on grand stages, performing for thousands, his name recognized across continents. But he never forgot where it began. The battered guitar, the hunger, the mocking voices, and the moment when his heart broke free on a stage with Hotel California. In every performance, he carried his village with him, singing not just for himself but for every child who ever believed they were too small, too poor, or too forgotten to matter. Elias's story became a symbol of hope. He showed the world that greatness doesn't come from wealth or privilege, but from resilience, truth, and the courage to pour your soul into what you love. His voice reminded people of their own hidden strength, urging them to face their fears, embrace their pain, and turn it into something beautiful. In the end, Elias did not just sing a song. He told a story, his story, and through it, he touched millions. The boy who once sang alone by the sea had stunned the world, proving that even the most fragile voice can become the loudest when it carries the truth of the human heart. The night before his first big performance, Elias sat in the tiny rented apartment his family shared in the city. The place was barely big enough for 4 people, its walls thin, the air damp, and the flickering bulb above them buzzing faintly. His father had taken extra shifts at sea just to pay for the trip, and his mother sold nearly all her vegetables to cover the registration fee. They had nothing left, yet they gave everything. Elias sat cross-legged on the floor with the borrowed guitar beside him, staring at his hands. They trembled, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of responsibility. He knew this wasn't just about him. It was about his entire family, his entire village, his future. That night, his father placed a hand on his shoulder. His calloused fingers felt heavy, worn from years of labor. "Elias," he said softly, "tomorrow, when you stand on that stage, remember this: don't sing to impress. Sing like you did as a child, when the sea was your only audience. Sing like you are telling your story to God himself." Elias nodded, and tears welled in his eyes. He didn't sleep much that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of his family, his village, and the mocking voices of those who said he would never make it. The next day, as he walked onto the stage for the auditions, his knees nearly buckled. The hall looked endless, the lights blinding. The crowd's whispers reached his ears. "Who is he? He looks so nervous. Some chuckled softly, doubting him before he even opened his mouth. The judges glanced at him with polite disinterest, expecting another ordinary performance. Elias swallowed hard, clutching the microphone like a lifeline. When the music started, his voice cracked in the first few seconds. The audience winced, a judge's eyebrow raised, and Elias's heart sank. He felt the temptation to stop, to run, to prove the doubters right. But then he remembered his father's words and took a deep breath. He closed his eyes, shutting out the crowd, and let the memories flood him, the nights of hunger, the salty smell of the sea, his mother's tired smile, the pain of being mocked. And from that pain rose a voice so powerful, so raw, that it silenced the hall. The first verse of Hotel California carried sorrow like a river and hope like a sunrise. Each word shook the air with honesty, each note reached into the hearts of strangers. The crowd leaned forward, stunned. Some wiped away tears without realizing it. By the chorus, the judges were no longer skeptical, they were transfixed. And when he finished, silence swallowed the hall before thunderous applause erupted. The golden buzzer was pressed, and confetti rained down as Elias fell to his knees, overwhelmed. He wasn't just singing anymore, he was living. The performance spread across the world in days. Clips of his trembling start and soul-crushing finale went viral, shared millions of times. People from countries Elias had never heard of sent him messages. Veterans who said his voice healed old scars, mothers who said it gave them hope for their children, young dreamers who said it inspired them to keep fighting. The poor boy from a forgotten village had touched the globe. But behind the glitter of applause lay new storms. Fame came at a price. Elias was just a boy, and the industry was ruthless. Managers circled like vultures, offering contracts filled with hidden traps. Some promised wealth beyond imagination, but at the cost of his freedom. His family, naive to the ways of business, nearly signed away his rights until the kind coach who had first believed in him intervened. "You must protect your gift," the coach warned. "Your voice is more valuable than money. Don't let them steal it from you." The competition continued, round after round. Each week, Elias had to prove himself again, facing singers with polished training, expensive wardrobes, and powerful backstories. He often felt out of place, dressed in second-hand clothes, his shoes worn, his nerves raw. There were nights he cried quietly, fearing he wasn't good enough. But each time, he remembered why he was there, not for glory, not for wealth, but for truth. He chose songs that carried emotion, songs that told stories of struggle and survival. And every time he sang, the audience wept, because Elias didn't just sing, he confessed, he bled, he prayed through his voice. In the semi-finals, he nearly collapsed under the pressure. The expectations were crushing, and whispers of doubt spread. Maybe his first performance was luck. Hours before going on stage, Elias sat alone backstage, head in his hands, fighting back panic. Then, his mother appeared. She pressed a small, worn handkerchief into his palm. "This belonged to your grandmother," she whispered. She sang while working in the fields to keep herself strong. "She passed her voice to me, and now it's yours. When you sing tonight, remember you carry all of us with you." Elias clenched the handkerchief and walked on stage. That night, he sang not as a competitor, but as a son carrying generations of unspoken pain. He didn't win the grand prize. Another contestant, polished and powerful, took the trophy. But by then, it no longer mattered. Elias had already won the world's heart. His videos were watched by millions. Invitations came from abroad. Musicians wanted to collaborate. He was flown to concerts where audiences of thousands chanted his name. Yet through it all, Elias remained grounded. He returned to his village often, helping rebuild schools, repairing boats, and funding scholarships for children who, like him, had once been told they were too poor to dream. Years later, standing on the stage of a massive international concert, Elias performed Hotel California once more. This time, he was not the trembling boy with sweaty hands, but a confident young man whose voice carried wisdom far beyond his years. The crowd, tens of thousands strong, sang along with him, their voices echoing into the night sky. As he sang, he thought of his father's guitar, his mother's handkerchief, the mocking voices, the hunger, and the storms. Every note was a reminder that he had turned pain into beauty, fear into strength, and dreams into reality. When the final chord faded, Elias raised his hand, tears in his eyes, and the crowd erupted. Cameras flashed, flags waved, voices roared. But in that moment, Elias wasn't thinking of fame. He was thinking of the little boy who once sang to the sea, believing that maybe, just maybe, the world would one day listen. And now, the world had. In the end, Elias's journey was never just about a boy singing Hotel California. It was about hope, about proving that no dream is too big and no background too small. He had been told he was nothing but a fisherman's son, that he would never stand on great stages, that his voice would never reach beyond the waves of his village shore. And yet, he proved them wrong. Elias showed the world that greatness is not measured by wealth, privilege, or fame, it is measured by courage, resilience, and the ability to pour your heart into what you love. He sang not to impress, but to heal. He sang not to become famous, but to tell his truth. And because of that, the world listened. Long after the applause faded, after the lights dimmed and the cameras turned off, his story lived on in every person who dared to chase a dream despite the odds. For every child who feels invisible, for every soul who feels too broken, Elias became a symbol. His voice whispered to them, "You are enough. Your story matters. Don't give up." Answer, the boy who once sang to the sea became a legend who sang to the world. His name may fade with time, but the spirit of his song, raw, emotional, and true, will echo forever, reminding us all that even in the darkest nights, a single voice can light up the world.